Hello guys, and welcome to my video about the Assassination Rogue in BFA, and mostly about the changes that we are going to be seeing. Just a disclaimer for this video, I'm going to let you guys know that this is not the final product. There are probably a lot of changes that Blizzard want to do to this spec and a lot of other specs. So remember to take this with a grain of salt, and don't crucify me if this information isn't the same as it is in a few months' time. Now, I just wanted to start off by saying that I really do like the current build of Assassination on the beta, and namely the fact that there is a lot of user interaction that goes into the amount of damage that you are doing. For example, on live we are seeing right now that Poison Bomb is completely destroying as a completely passive artifact trait. Now, what this means is that regardless of gameplay, a lot of the time it was just which rogue would do the most Poison Bomb damage. However, right now we are seeing instead that Poison Bomb is a rather weak talent that is still passive, yes, but as long as it does less damage than the other two counterparts, then it should be completely fine and balanced. Now, on top of this, I really do like the way that they have handled the execute for the Assassination Rogue, really giving it an identity in the coming expansion, and I will get into how that is later, so just stay tuned for that. So first off, to be the bearer of bad news, I'm going to say that Kingsbane is actually gone from the game in BFA. I know, Kingsbane was an amazing ability, it did a lot of damage, and it did even more if you played it right. However, we are going to see a lot of other things that are going to make Kingsbane's loss not forgotten. So we are going to see better use of talents, similar to how we used them at the start of Legion. Now, of course, I am also going to state that there is a nerf for Feint for all of the rogue specs. Now, on live, it currently has only a GCD, but on BFA, it has a GCD and a 15-second cooldown, as well as 10% less damage reduction than what it has on live. On top of this, this pretty much nerfs elusiveness for us, which in turn is going to mean that our raid survivability is worse if we are using Feint and elusiveness. So this is probably going to render us as cheat death bots for the whole expansion, and I will get onto that a little bit later. And of course, with the loss of our artifact weapon, we are going to be seeing that Vendetta is going to be a base 2-minute cooldown unless you do get an Azurite trait, which reduces the cooldown of this ability. Now, honestly, I do sort of like this. I felt like having your Vendetta at these really weird times depending on your relics, and then trying to have to work it around Vanish and Kingsbane and everything, was sort of a liability. Like, it did good damage, but it still felt a little bit clunky just sitting on your Vanish for about 30 seconds of time. So honestly, I think this is a welcome change. We are going to be learning to live without our artifact abilities and all of the good stuff that it brings. Another big thing that we are going to be losing from this is Balance Blades and Surge of Toxins. Now, Balance Blades on live pretty much means that our Mutilates have a higher chance to critically strike, which increases our damage and increases our CP gen. And at the same time, we are also going to be losing Surge of Toxins, which was something that you would clip early on around Nighthold. Next up, I'm going to talk about something really exciting, the new Azurite Pieces. Now, in my opinion, these pieces are incredible. So you can basically choose one thing that is homogeneous for all of the rogue specs. You can choose one for Assass, one for a Sash/Sub, and then you have one for Outlaw specifically. Now, this is really where you can start to get your identity as a player. This is where you can start to say, am I a Mythic Plus player? Am I a Raider? Do I have sets for both? You can really do what you want. And in my opinion, these are fantastic. Now, for example, we can look here that this one increases our agility by 109 for every target that you have ruptured. Now, for multi-target fights and Mythic Plus, I would say this is insane, and probably the best of all of these for Assassination. However, if I was to go for a single target fight, I would perhaps look at this one, the Sharpened Blades, as my single target go-to. After this, you have a defensive tier. Essentially, you get to choose which ones are good for Mythic Plus, things with ads that are dying, just straight up single target rating. You've got a lot of options, and I think it's really cool. And last but not least, you just have a simple eye level increase. This just means that you want to be investing a little bit more time into your artifact power and making sure that you're unlocking these tiers as soon as possible. Now, of course, I cannot say which of these options are the best in slots. I think people need to do a little bit more number crunching and a little bit more theory crafting in that regard. Honestly, I haven't played enough to be able to tell. I guess I'm just going to go off feel for the next couple of weeks and see what happens. And next up, we have the change to Assassination Rogues, which I think is the best one out of all of them. It is the Haste Change. Now, Haste, essentially on live, it is something you wouldn't feed to your dog. It is just the worst stat ever. You never want to have any haste on your gear. Mastery is something like 3 or 4 times more powerful, so why would you consider having even a bit of haste on your gear? Now, essentially what haste is going to be doing for us next expansion is it is going to increase the speed of our bleeds. Now, what this means is that Garrote and Rupture are actually going to scale with your haste like they didn't before. Now, this may actually lead to a little bit of snapshotting, which Blizzard doesn't really like looking into, but we'll just see how that goes and if haste is really going to start outweighing some of the other stats. Personally, I think this is a fantastic change because it essentially means that even if an item has haste on it, if it's an eye level upgrade, you might even end up using it. And this also means that you don't do the boring thing of stacking purely one stat and feeling hard done by if you don't get a piece of gear with that stat on it. On top of this, I agree that making a class a little bit faster with the use of haste is always good, as it always makes the player use a little bit more APM in their gameplay, and they don't have to think so much about pulling 24/7 if they have a larger amount of haste than they do on the current live build. Next up, we are going to see the Potent Assassin, our mastery, being changed. Now before, it did a larger amount of our poisons, which essentially meant that if you went for a mastery build, you were a poison player. Now however, it seems that if you go poison or bleed, they are both going to be buffed the same amount by our mastery. Now honestly, I think this is really good, because what this means is that you gear the same. You only need 1 or maybe 2 sets of gear for all the fights. However, you are going to be playing differently based on what caters to the fight. And in my opinion, this shows how good you really are as a player, and it really shows how adaptable you are to fights, and how willing you are, of course, to use your Tomes of the Tranquil Mind. Next up, even though this isn't really like a direct thing that is being changed by Blizzard, you are going to see that your stats are going to be much lower comparing yourself from last expansion to early on in this expansion. So for example, you're going to see that your crit is very, very low. Your haste is going to be low, your mastery is going to be low. So sometimes you're going to be thinking to yourself, why are my abilities just not critting, and why am I not getting much CP regen? Now, how we are probably going to counter this is that early on, people are going to be wanting a lot of crit and even maybe a bit of haste depending on how it sims. And after this, once you feel like you have just enough crit to almost guarantee yourself 3 combo point mutilates, you're probably going to be looking towards your mastery build a little bit later on, perhaps even a verse build if it sims well enough. Next up, we are going to be looking at the meat and potatoes of pretty much any class in the game. This is going to be the talents, and this is the section that is going to be changed the most. Now, we are going to start off with the tier 15 talent. We are looking at Master Poisoner, Elaborate Planning, and Blindside. Now, Master Poisoner, it doesn't have a nerf on it. However, simply because of the way that our mastery works, this is going to be a lot weaker than what we are used to seeing. Now, next to this, we actually do have Elaborate Planning. This was pretty much our hero early on in Emerald Nightmare and in TOV. Now, if you guys don't remember, this was a little bit about stacking your Elaborate Planning buffs on top of each other. So what you would do, you would put a large Rupture, well, you would pool, you would put down a large Rupture, and then you'd use 2 Mutilates and you try to go for an Envenom. And essentially what this means is you cast the Rupture, you have increased damage for 10 more seconds, you cast your Envenom about 3.5 seconds in, and then you get another Elaborate Planning buff with the buff onto your previous Envenom. Now, this is weaker than it used to be. It is only 10% and 4 seconds as opposed to the previous 15 and 5. However, with the current build that I've been running, I think outside of Execute, this is definitely stronger than Master Poisoner. Now, obviously, I sort of just let the cat out of the bag. This one is going to be our Execute talent. This is going to be Blindside, and as you see, when you are not in Execute range, it allows you to actually use the Blindside whenever you use the Mutilate, and it has a 25% chance to do this. So I actually really like this ability because you have the Blindside baked into your rotation. It guarantees a lot of the time that you can get 5 CP finishes instead of 4, which is, in my opinion, just like really efficient, right? In terms of being a number crunching guy, I just think that's super efficient. So this one is going to probably be the thing that lends Assassination the tools to do prog. And even if you do fall behind a little bit earlier in the fight, having a reliable Execute compared to some of the other classes can really push it over the top. Like, if you pair Execute with a really tanky class and a melee class, like, it's always just going to have a spot in the raid, you know? Unless, for some reason, this just does 0 damage and absolutely does nothing. But, yeah, it's not going to be like that. This one's gonna have a spot. Now, onto our tier 30 talents. We're going to start off with Night Stalker, Subterfuge, and Master Assassin. Now, obviously, Night Stalker is our go-to talent with the shoulders. The Subterfuge is the go-to talent with the boots. And Master Assassin is a little bit of a nerf version of our shoulders. So essentially, it's going to be 2 seconds less on the duration, and it's going to be 50% less critical strike chance. So even though this really does make it feel better to play, I do not think that this talent in its current iteration is going to be worth it. Maybe if a poison build comes up later on, this one will be better, simply because you can do like a Vanish, Envenom, Mutilate or something, and then it'll be worth it. But for now, I think it's going to be Night Stalker all the way, because of a build I will get onto a bit later. Now, we're going to be looking at tier 45. This is going to be Vigor, Deeper Stratagem, and Mark for Death. Now, as you can see, Mark for Death actually has a 30-second cooldown down from 60, which makes it completely viable when there are targets dying. Now, what this also means is you can do a pretty nifty opener that one of my mates was talking to me about. You can basically do this, right? I'll just show you real quick. So if you are running Exsanguinate, you can go up, you can Garrote, Mutilate, Rupture, and then you can Mark for Death, Vanish Rupture, with a Vendetta on top. So you can do something like this, right? And basically, it's made your opener that much quicker, and honestly, it feels pretty good. If this was the way the class would be played, like, I honestly wouldn't mind it too much. However, even though this one has really good burst, and it has the extra CP gen from this one, I still do think that Vigor is the stronger choice at the current iteration, and Deeper Stratagem, I don't think it cuts it really. I just don't think Deeper Stratagem is good enough with the current iteration. But we'll have to see. Like, maybe Sims could prove me wrong. Maybe it gets buffed. Who knows? And onto the tier 60 talent. We are going to have Leeching Poison, Cheat Death, and as said before, the nerfed Elusiveness. Now, Leeching Poison is down from 12% to 10%. No biggie. I still think it has its uses, like very niche uses. Cheat Death is just much better than the others. Like, I don't know why they would hit these two and then leave Cheat Death when you're literally just leaving Cheat Death on 90% of the time. But, you know, Blizzard can do their own thing. We can just do whatever we want, right? These two are just nerfed. I'm going to go over this quickly, but this can be stronger in certain scenarios. If there is AoE damage and a dot on you, then it is probably worth it over Cheat Death. Leeching Poison, if you are not getting one shot by abilities, it is actually better than the other two. So, you know, if you're just a really good player and you can play with Leeching Poison, go for it. Like, it's fine, honestly. And I'll be honest, the best thing about this, though, is we actually get to keep Crippling Poison. So we got a 2% nerf to our Leeching Poison effect, but we can equip it at the same time as we use the other two, which can be good for stuff like Mythic Plus. Now, onto the tier 75, we're going to see Internal Bleeding, Iron Wire, and Prey on the Weak. Most of the time we are just going to go Prey on the Weak or Internal Bleeding. I'm not the biggest fan of either of these abilities, but I guess they do have their niches. I think Prey on the Weak is the best one in this tier, simply because if you have to stun and add, it's likely that the rest of your DPS are going to be able to swap to it and completely destroy it, right? So I would pretty much set and forget this talent at this current iteration. Now, onto the tier 91, this is where it starts to get really interesting, because we have Venom Rush, which people are saying is actually pretty good for the CP gen. People are saying that playing with Venom Rush is similar to playing on live, and it gives us a lot more mutilates and a lot more energy refund. However, at this current iteration, I don't think it is that strong, especially because you lose DPS if you pair it with Blindside. Blindside doesn't gain any energy back from using it with this, and if it did, then honestly these two would be extremely strong, not gonna lie. Up next we are going to have the Toxic Blade ability. Now, Toxic Blade, of course, it is pretty much the same as it is on live, without having its best friend, the Kingsbane, or the shoulders to go with it. This ability is a lot weaker. Like, especially with the change to the mastery, this ability just isn't going to be doing much damage at all, which is a little bit sad. I feel bad for this ability because you did have to time in Venom through it, but it is what it is. It'll get stronger later on. Now, my favorite talent on this tier, Exsanguinate. This ability is great. It means that you have to think a few seconds beforehand about reapplying your dots. I'll give you guys a hint. Your main thing is to make sure that you're making a very big Vanish Rupture on the opener, and then you're going to be Exsanguinating it. Then your second Rupture, you only need a 3 to 4 combo point Rupture to keep it up until you can refresh it before your next Exsanguinate. But your main key to this spec is maximizing your Garrote and your Rupture inside your Exsanguinate, and making sure that you are refreshing these before you use your Exsanguinate. Now, next up, we have the tier that I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with. We have Poison Bomb, Hidden Blades, and Crimson Tempest. Now, honestly, I think of these three, the Crimson Tempest is the coolest one. It basically guarantees that we can have some sustained AoE damage as the Assassination Rogue. Instead of people just coming into my keys as Assassination Rogue, they do like 2 mil DPS overall, and they're like, oh man, I didn't get enough poison bombs. There's no excuse when you have Crimson Tempest, you just have to play well, right? And yeah, this is essentially going to be our Sustain Cleave build. This is going to be our Burst Cleave build, and potentially our best in slot for single target. On the current iteration, this is actually doing better than Poison Bomb. So yeah, I really do like this talent. On top of that, you can also do some interesting things where you go from 4 to 5 CP using your Hidden Blades talent, and it makes it overall a very big DPS increase. Now, Poison Bomb, the damage is normalized, so it procs a lot more often, but it does way less damage. I like seeing this ability not too strong. Like, I don't like seeing this ability strong at all. Unless they can find a way to make it like, when you get to 5 stacks of this ability, then you use a Poison Bomb, right? So it just does the same damage every time. Yeah, I can't tell you guys how much, well, how happy I am that this is not going to be too strong. At least I hope. If this is strong again, catch me playing Outlawed. But yeah, that's pretty much it for talents. I'm going to go over pretty much the mock rotation that I've been doing for the last couple of days. This build is what I would say is the best single target for now. It also has the option of gaining a lot of energy through our Exsanguinate and having a good amount of burst cleave from our hidden blades, like I said before. So just quickly, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look something like this. We're going to Garrote, Mutilate, Rupture, then we're going to Vendetta, get to 5, Vanish Rupture, Exsanguinate, and Happy Rating. So just as follows. Sorry, my UI is a little bit bin as well. So we're actually going to chuck that one in there. And yeah, I just used the 20 stacks there. And then as soon as this goes off, we're going to reapply it. It's important to see that it gets dropped off before we reapply. So same goes for this one. As soon as it's off, just go again. So that just about wraps up my video for the changes to Assassination Rogue in battle for Azeroth. Now, of course, if you guys do have any questions, if you want to be updated along the way, make sure to jump into my stream, DM me on Twitter, chuck me anything on Twitter, and remember to give me a thumbs up if you like this sort of content. I'm going to be trying to get as many videos out as I can in the pre-patch and before the actual expansion launches, and I'll try to keep you guys updated on the specs that I am playing along the way throughout the expansion. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.